From the pandemic to protests over racial justice to the looming presidential election, Americans are facing a series of challenges. Data from the Barna Research Group suggests that not only are younger generations viewing religion and the world differently, but half of pastors say they are struggling in their ministry to kids and youth. Joining us now from the Barna Group for more on this is its president, David Kinnaman. David, thanks for joining us.
It's good to be with you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
First off, what trends are you seeing when it comes to the younger generation's religious beliefs and their outlooks on the world?
Well, in general, American young people are both very religious, but also really struggling in a lot of ways with Christianity. We find that 6 out of 10 young people who grow up as Christian during their 18 to 29-year-old phase of life will walk away either from the church or from their faith. And yet, at the same time, they have incredible and deep questions about spirituality, about the truth of Scripture, about whether church matters in their life, who Jesus is. And so we think there's incredible opportunities for the church to minister with real relevance today to these emerging generations, what people call Generation Z.
David, the Barna Group wrote an article looking at 5 trends about discipling the next generation. Tell us about those.
Well, we've been doing work for many years looking at generational change, and over the last decade, we've been studying millennials and Generation Z. We found these 5 key themes that are very important for us to focus in on when we're discipling this emerging generation. And there's a way for us to make a deep and lasting impact on this generation. Among those themes include our response to issues of injustice. This is a generation that wants to see the church not just talk about issues, but also have a real integrated response, a biblical response to the questions of justice today for people of color and others. We also find that huge levels of loneliness and anxiety are cropping up all over, and especially during the pandemic, they're wrestling with education and digital education and learning from home or other places. And so how does the church show up to disciple through this age of anxiety is a huge theme, and we've been learning a lot about how the church can show up with deep answers on those topics. We've also seen some incredible resilience among young people, and we call them these resilient disciples. And about 10% of young people who grow up in Christianity become resilient disciples. It's far too small a number. We wish it were much higher, but there are some very specific things that we can do as church leaders and as parents to really invest in these resilient disciples, including giving them greater confidence in Scripture, helping them understand how Scripture applies to us even in an anxious age amidst all the changes. I mean, just listen to the program we've been hearing all the election and the hurricane and the pandemic and racial injustice, and so how does the God of the Bible show up to minister to the hearts of this generation who are feeling very unsettled, as we all are, about the incredible changes and challenges that we face as a society. And I just have this great hope of what's happening now in the church because of what this next generation represents and what they believe and how we can really minister truth to them.
David, quickly, we've got less than a minute, but have you seen massive changes in your research, particularly this year with everything going on?
Well, certainly when it comes to church attendance and church engagement, and that's one of the reasons we have to be very thoughtful as parents and as ministers of the gospel with this next generation. We don't have the usual things of like going to church and all the usual experiences. So because there is so much that's up for grabs, we have to rethink our approach to ministry today. And that's what Barna Group comes to do, to try to support parents and leaders to give you a better, more research-based approach to really developing lives of resilience so that people can represent the truth of Jesus in their lives. And man, I love this generation. I have 3 Gen Zers myself. I'm very hopeful about the church rising to the occasion of helping people understand the truth of Scripture today for the sake of this next generation.
All right, David Kinnaman, the president of the Barna Group. Thank you, David.